usage rate is not a good indicator for character strength. Now, sure, there might be small amount of correlation. It's like, hey, if a character is really strong, then more people probably want to use it. But usage rate in general is just not a good indicator at all and should be never used in any part of character justification. This is because there's a couple of problems. First of all, the formula for usage rate is flawed, where it divides the percent of people who use it over the percent of people who own it. And you can immediately see the problem here is that the dividend causing a lot of problem, because when you divide by the people who own it, then it skews the actual number a lot. But a even bigger problem is that recently MiHoYo has disabled the API for Genshin Impact, which basically makes usage rates completely irrelevant because it's just unreliable. There's no more reliable data source anymore. So when your data is inaccurate, your formula on top of that is going to be even more inaccurate. So it just doesn't work at all. So let's talk about usage rate. Starting off with the more recent news, which is the MiHoYo disabling the API. For those who are not into computer, API stand for Application Programming Interface. It is how computer or website talk to each other and get data. This is pretty much how SpiralAbyss.org pull their data. They will start with what we call a Postman request. It will ask MiHoYo's APIs for some data. It will say, hey, can you tell me what this player on this server did to clear SpiralAbyss? There's actually an exact API link that I can show you, and it will give you some relevant data back in the form of a JSON file. In this case, in this example, you can see that this player have 3-star Abyss Floor 12, Chamber 3. In Chamber 3 first half, they used these 4 characters, and in Chamber 3 second half, they used these 4 characters. Now, of course, these characters are coded in the form of character ID. They're not actually returned in name because character ID are numbers which are just easier to return. However, you can basically get the idea. There's actually a mapping between character ID back to the characters, and it's pretty much how website pull their data. And using this API is really easy to pull massive amount of data from MiHoYo server. You can tell exactly how many characters are being played in the current Abyss, how many characters are being used to 36-star Abyss. And this is how SpiralAbyss.org or even any other SpiralAbyss data website is constructed. But a while back, MiHoYo pretty much killed this API. It's just stopped working. You can't get data anymore. You cannot get data anymore. And it just means that there's no reliable data anymore. And well, it's pretty much killed the entire project already. And here you can already see the first problem: no accurate data. But what's even more important before the API things is that, well, usage rates as a formula is just flawed and it's just inaccurate. If you have taken stats before, you probably have heard about the causation versus correlation relationship and how correlation is not the same as causation. And we can go over a couple of good, easy to understand example for people who did not take statistics during their school's years, or I don't know. For example, here you can see 2 graphs, the red one representing oil import, the black one represents the number of drivers killed in collision with a railway train. You can actually see that these 2 graphs are very close, and they actually have a 95% correlation, which means that they are tightly correlated. However, even though they're tightly correlated, can you say that the more oil import there is, the more driver is being killed by railway train? Well, you can't really say that because there's no relationship between these two at all. So you can't actually say the oil import is the cause of driver being killed in collision with railway train, as even though they have tight correlation. This is the classic case of correlation does not equals causation. They have good correlation, but just because they have correlation, it doesn't mean that one is caused by the other. And sure, it is a lot different in Genshin Impact than the example I just showed. There is definitely a certain amount of correlation and causation between character usage rate and their string, but it's definitely not the only thing. A character being high usage rate is not exactly one-to-one correlate with their string, and their string is definitely not the only and the direct cause of their usage rate being high, and that is the issues here. And a really good example to take a look is the current data on the SpiralAbyss.com. This video is recorded on February 12th, so this data might be different if you look at it now. But here you can actually see that Kokomi have a 83% usage rate, which is higher than Kazu and Raiden and equivalent to Bennett. But just because Kokomi have this high usage rate, can you actually say that Kokomi have the same strength as Bennett? Can you actually say that Kokomi have higher strength than Kazu or Raiden? It would be absurd if you actually think so, right? As these are some of the best characters in the game. Bennett is the #1 god of Genshin Impact. Kazu is so good, rated really high by a lot of people. Now, I'm of course not saying Kokomi is not good, but I'm just saying Kokomi is probably not as good as the one true god known as Bennett. So in this case, you can see how the usage rate is just flawed, because if usage rate truly represented character strength, then well, it will imply that Kokomi is equal to Bennett, and the only other explanation is that usage rate doesn't actually reflect character strength. What usage rate really mean is that people who own Kokomi is choosing to run Kokomi more, probably because they like Kokomi and chose to pull for Kokomi in the first place. And that's the thing. The problem with usage rate's formula is that, well, when you divide by ownership rate, it's highly skewed toward favorism.
If you just really like the Dio brothers, then Ito could be a really good pickup for you.
If you enjoy a character for reasons like their voice actor,
These videos are by no means meant to stop you from spending your primo gems on them, and are not meant to stop you from pulling your favorite waifu character.
If you like a character, pull them and use them.
If you like a character, regardless of meta, you're gonna pull for it and probably run it, and therefore you're gonna scale the usage rate toward the higher end. For example, if out of 100 people, 5 of them liked Kokomi, they all pulled up for Kokomi and they all decide to use Kokomi, then Kokomi will have 100% usage rate, as the 5 people who pulled it for her choose to use her. On the other hand, if 70 people out of 100 chose to pull for Kazuha, but only 69 of them actually used Kazuha, in this case, Kazuha will have a 98% usage rate, which is less than the 100% rate that Kokomi has. Nevertheless, Kokomi and Kazuha are dramatically different characters, and actually in this example, there is exactly 64 people more that are using Kazuha than Kokomi, which is a 1,300% different. And so you can here see that usage rate doesn't tell the entire story at all. On the other hand of the spectrum, characters that are given out for free or characters that are owned by a lot of people, maybe they have been on multiple banners, have really high ownership rate, but because not everyone would invest into that character or not everyone would play that character for different reasons, not necessarily for meta reason, that character will have a lot lower usage rate. They're simply scaled to the lower end simply because, well, the formula again is flawed. Example of these are characters like Beidou, Kaya, Sucrose, or even Xiangling for the longest time. Some of these characters still have low usage rate. I'm talking about Beidou or even Sucrose exactly. However, they are considered to be some of the stronger character by a lot of the figure crafters. Sucrose is considered one of the strongest character in Genshin Impact, and of course Xiangling is one of the characters that was given out for free and is a really strong character. The problem is that when Xiangling is given out to every player for free, she have 100% ownership rate, which is the worst possible scenario for usage rate. In this case, single person who doesn't use Xiangling will contribute to Xiangling having a low usage rate. On the other hand, people who don't own characters, say Kokomi at all, does not affect Kokomi usage rate in anyhow, and so you end up in this case where some player affect some characters usage rate dramatically more than other, and it just doesn't make sense to look at it like that. And of course, remember in the early days of Genshin, like Xiangling used to have a super low usage rate, but does that make her a bad character? Well, as we all know by now, like Xiangling is one of the best characters in the game, especially since she's given out for free. A much better stat to actually look at would be vacancy rate, which you can see at the spiralabyss.com. They actually have this listed. Vacancy rate characters that are invested but are still not being used. In this case, you chose to invest into the characters, potentially hoping to use them, but you still chose not to use them. This is a much better metric to use than, say, either usage rate or ownership rate, but nobody uses this for some reason. Everyone only likes to look at usage rate, even though that there is a better data in front of us, which is the vacancy rate. Of course, the vacancy rate still have problem, which is still count toward favorism, but at least it's a much better metric than usage rate. Again, usage rates might have some amount of correlation with a character string, but there's also a lot of data that contribute to usage rate. For example, favorite of the month or general favoritism, some characters are more likable than others. Ease of use is a kind of important one because some people do like characters that are easier to use, but it doesn't mean that a character that is harder to use is dramatically weaker, and there's a lot of other stuff as well. Spiral Abyss stock ore should never be served as any evidence when it comes to figure crafting. It should not be used as any evidence when it comes to figure crafting. And so please stop using usage rate as any kind of justification for a character. A high usage rate character is not automatically good. On the other hand, a low usage rate character is not automatically bad. And this is even more important because, well, the website is now broken due to the lack of an API, which just means that it's fundamentally flawed on so many levels now.